Hello friends, welcome to English Tech by Dr. Geoffrey Chaucer. Friends, here in this video, we are going to discuss Geoffrey Chaucer as a writer. Friends, every discussion of English literature begins with the name of Geoffrey Chaucer. Whenever we discuss about English literature, we can never ignore the name of some writers like Geoffrey Chaucer, John Milton, William Shakespeare, William Wordsworth, John Keats, Shelley, D.H. Lawrence, and so many others. That is, we cannot ignore all these writers. And therefore, we shall discuss Geoffrey Chaucer as a writer here in this video. Friends, Geoffrey Chaucer lived during the late 14th century. And he was the first writer who started writing in English. However, there were other writers writing in English, but they were not so mature. They were not so prominent as Geoffrey Chaucer. And therefore, Geoffrey Chaucer is known as the father of English literature. It was Geoffrey Chaucer who first started writing in English. I told you earlier that he lived during the late 14th century, and that 14th century is known as the Middle English period. That is, Geoffrey Chaucer lived during the Middle English period. It was the late 14th century. Chaucer's literary career ranges approximately from 1360 to 1400, making him a prominent figure in English literature during the later part of the Middle Ages. That is, in short, Geoffrey Chaucer was a prominent literary figure in English during the later part of the Middle Ages. Friends, Chaucer's works reflect the transitional nature of the literary landscape during his time. This Middle English period saw the gradual shift from Old English to early Middle English. That is, Old English was replaced by early modern English during this period, during this Middle English period. And this is important landmark. This is important feature of this period, that is shift from Old English to early modern English. This early modern English later on emerged in the Renaissance. Chaucer's writing played a crucial role in this linguistic and literary development. And therefore, Chaucer's contribution to the development of English language and English literature as well cannot be ignored so easily. He helped to solidify the use of Middle English as a literary language. That is, it was Geoffrey Chaucer who first started writing in Middle English, and in this way, he solidified the use of Middle English as a literary language. His famous work, The Canterbury Tales, was written in the 14th century. The Canterbury Tales exemplifies the characteristics and themes of the time. That is, the Canterbury Tales perfectly reflects the contemporary society. It showcases the characteristics of the Middle Age. And in this way, the Canterbury Tales is supposed to be a great landmark in the history of English literature. This poem, The Canterbury Tales, consists of a collection of stories, and all these stories are told by a diverse group of pilgrims traveling to Canterbury. Every member of that group traveling to the Canterbury represents a different class and profession in medieval society. We find a panoramic view of the medieval society in the Canterbury Tales. And for this reason also, the Canterbury Tales is supposed to be a great landmark in the history of English literature. Through these tales, Chaucer provides a vivid depiction of the social, cultural, and moral aspects of his era, that is his age. That is, there is a perfect reflection of the social, cultural, and moral aspects of the medieval society in the Canterbury Tales, and therefore the Canterbury Tales is supposed to be a great landmark in the history of English literature, and it is a major contribution of Geoffrey Chaucer to English literature. Friends, Chaucer's writing also reflects the literary traditions of his time. Chaucer was greatly influenced by French and Italian literary sources. There was a deep impression of French and Italian literature on Chaucer's mind, and we find this impression on his writing also. There was a deep impression of the works of the writers like Boccaccio and Dante on his mind, and we find this impression perfectly reflected in his writings. That is, Geoffrey Chaucer was greatly influenced by the French and Italian writers. Chaucer's knowledge of these traditions, combined with his mastery of the English language, allowed him to create a unique and distinctive body of work that showcased the emerging literary potential of Middle English. That's the important thing you must bear in your mind. In addition to his masterpiece, The Canterbury Tales, Chaucer's other major works include Troilus and Cressida and the Book of Duchess. Troilus and Cressida is a tragic romance, and it is based on the story of Troilus and Cressida from Greek mythology. His another work, the Book of Duchess, is an elegy, and this elegy is, that is, the Book of Duchess is written on the death of John of Gaunt's wife, Blanche. In this way, Along with the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer's major contributions are Troilus and Cressida and the Book of the Duchess, which reflect the literary tendencies of his time, his age. And therefore, these are major works by Chaucer. You must know as a student of English language. Friends, Chaucer's writings left a lasting impact on the subsequent generations of poets and writers. His influence can be seen in the works of later English authors such as Edmund Spenser, William Shakespeare. That is, we find deep impression of Chaucer on the writings of the poet Edmund Spenser and the great dramatist William Shakespeare. All these writers belonging to the later generations drew inspiration from Chaucer's storytelling technique, which we find perfectly in the Canterbury Tales. They have drawn inspiration from his use of vernacular English also. That is, the poets and writers of the later generations drew inspiration from Chaucer's storytelling technique and use of vernacular English. In this way, we find deep impression of Chaucer as a writer on the writers and poets and dramatists belonging to the later generations also. In the conclusion of this video, I will like to repeat the certain points which I have discussed in this video. First thing you should keep in mind is that the age of Chaucer in English literature is the late 14th century. It is also known as the Middle Age. It is the medieval society. It marks a significant transition in the evolution of the English language and the emergence of Middle English as a literary medium. This is important feature. As a student of English literature, you must know. That is, Middle English is used by Chaucer, and that Middle English became a language of literature, English literature, later on. Chaucer's works played a pivotal role in this transformation, and his contributions continue to be celebrated and studied as important pillars of English literary history. In this, so friends, here in this video we discussed Chaucer as a writer. Once again, I will repeat certain points so that you should bear all these things in mind properly. First, as a writer, Chaucer lived during the 14th century. As a writer, his contribution to the English literature is the use of Middle English, vernacular English. It was Chaucer who first used English language for literary expression, and therefore he is known as the father of English literature. His literary career ranges from approximately 1360 to 1400, and his major contributions are the Canterbury Tales, then Troilus and Cressida, the Book of the Duchess. He was greatly influenced by the French and Italian writers like Boccaccio and Dante. Then he left his deep impression on the writers like Edmund Spenser and William Shakespeare. His storytelling techniques and use of vernacular English are his major contributions to English literature. I hope that you might have understood all these things. I repeated certain points deliberately so that you can bear all these things in your mind. Friends, if you like this video, please like. If you like this video, please hit the like button and share it with your friends also. If you want notes on this topic, the notes you can visit our website www.engagedtech.com. The description of the notes is given. The link of the notes is given in the description of box of this video. You can find the notes by clicking that link. Thank you.